Each interval from one note to another has a different name depending on the gap between them. These can be the basis of chords, which are playing two or more notes at the same time, but they can also be used in melodies when identifying the melodic movement between notes. Just like harmonies, intervals can be major, minor, diminished, and augmented. The smallest interval in music is called a semitone or half step, which is an interval without any notes in between. The next smallest is a tone or whole step, which has one note in between the interval. All intervals use scales as a basis to work from. It can be helpful to use a root note of a scale to help work out different intervals from that point. A root note is the starting note of a scale or key. For example, the root note of C major is C. Each note in a scale is numbered with the root note as 1. These numbers are called degrees of a scale. In a major scale, the first to the second is called a major second. The first to the third is called a major third. The first to the sixth is called a major sixth, and the first to the seventh is called a major seventh. This is the same for a minor scale, with the exception of the first to the second, which is only a minor second if it's a semitone higher than the root. This is slightly confusing, as that note isn't in the minor scale. The first to the fourth or fifth are called perfect intervals, as these are the same in the major and minor scales, starting from the same root note, so a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth. We can go over the octave to increase the interval, so a 9th, 10th, 11th, and so on. We're still counting up from the root, only now moving further away from it. In the same way as intervals within the octave, we can refer to extended intervals in terms of major and minor, if those notes would have been major or minor within the octave. C to E is still a major regardless of whether it's a third or a 10th above the root, in the same way that an 11th or a 12th are both perfect intervals. Intervals extended over an octave can also be referred to as compound intervals, where the original term for the smaller interval is used. For example, a compound major third is a major third an octave higher. A diminished interval is where a regular interval is reduced by a semitone, whereas an augmented interval is where a regular interval is increased by a semitone. This can depend on the notes in the scale of the key as well as which note is being increased or decreased, just as a sharp or flat depends on which note is being sharpened or flattened. For example, F sharp isn't in the major or minor scales from C, so we can refer to it as an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. Intervals are the basis of harmonic extensions. These are the notes added to chords to create more interesting harmonies. The difference is instead of defining one note to another, the extension note is added to harmonic notes to create interesting combinations of sound. Harmony notes are the first, third, and fifth notes of a scale. Not all these notes need to be played, and the names of certain chords or harmonies aren't necessarily the same as the intervals within them. For example, a minor seventh added to a major chord is called a dominant seventh. So, the main points about intervals are: each interval in music has a name. Intervals are made up of tones and semitones. Intervals can be major, minor, diminished, or augmented. Interval names use the positions of notes in a scale. And harmonic extensions add intervals to chords to create interesting harmonies.